A small girl in a worn-out apron had no idea that standing up for an elderly man being humiliated would ignite a wave of change stronger than any rallying cry Silverwood had ever witnessed. Let's follow the story of Samantha Cole's incredible courage. Maple Grove Diner, a weathered little diner on the corner of Main Street in Silverwood, Colorado, was as bustling as ever during the lunch rush. The scent of butter-fried burgers mixed with the sharp aroma of roasted coffee, weaving a familiar backdrop for the small-town regulars. But today, beneath the clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation, something fell off. Sitting quietly at a table by the window was Ezekiel "Zeke" Monroe, 78 years old. His silver hair spilled out from under an old, battered leather cap, and a cracked leather jacket clung to his stooped frame. He picked at his ham sandwich, one hand clutching a glass of watered-down lemonade. The jacket, once a glossy black, was now faded and stitched with patches, much like the man who wore it. At the corner counter, 3 teenagers loitered, their eyes brimming with mischief. One of them, a wiry boy with a backwards baseball cap, nudged Zeke's chair with his foot. When Zeke didn't react, the boy snickered and muttered something to his friends, sending them into fits of giggles. "Hey, old man, cat got your tongue," the boy said loudly, making sure the whole diner could hear. Zeke only bowed his head lower, unmoving like a weathered statue. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. A life spent staring down fear and death left him immune to cheap taunts. A girl with dyed green hair stepped closer, holding up her phone and aiming it squarely at Zeke's face. "Smile, Grandpa. Let's make you TikTok famous," she chirped. Zeke's hand tightened slightly on the table, but he didn't move. At the surrounding tables, a few diners turned their faces away, pretending not to see. The silence draped over the room like a cold, heavy blanket. The third teen, shorter and wiry, darted forward, snatching Zeke's lemonade and flinging it onto him. The cold liquid splattered across his worn jacket and faded jeans. Their laughter exploded through the diner, sharp, cruel, puncturing the air like needles. At the service counter, Samantha Cole, 24 years old, a waitress with a soft heart and a fierce spirit, gripped her serving tray so hard her knuckles turned white. The blood in her veins boiled at the sight. No one moved, no one spoke, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. Zeke sighed, slowly wiping the water from his jacket. His eyes drifted to the window, as if searching for something far beyond the chaos around him. A man who had spent a lifetime protecting others, and now no one would lift a finger to protect him. Samantha took a deep breath, her chest tightening with a mixture of fury and sorrow. She set her tray down, stepped out from behind the counter, and locked eyes on the bullies without blinking. "Enough," she said. Her voice was firm, cutting through the thick, cowardly silence that had settled over the diner. The 3 teenagers froze when they heard Samantha. She stood there, small in her faded blue Maple Grove Diner apron, but her eyes blazed with a fire no one dared to mock. "Out," Samantha said, her voice steady and unwavering. "Now!" The boy in the backwards baseball cap shrugged and smirked. "We were just messing around, lady. Chill." Samantha took a step forward, her arm outstretched, pointing squarely at the door. "We respect everyone here," she said sharply. "If you can't do that, you're not welcome." The green-haired girl glanced around and noticed the other patrons watching them now, several with their phones out recording. There was no safety in the crowd's indifference anymore. Grumbling under their breath, the teens slunk out of the diner, the glass door slamming behind them. The tension in the diner snapped, like a taut rope finally breaking. Zeke dipped his head in a small nod toward Samantha, a flicker of quiet gratitude glinting in his weary eyes. Samantha offered a shaky smile, her hands trembling slightly from the adrenaline that hadn't yet settled. But the moment of relief didn't last long. From the counter, a sharp voice sliced through the room. "Samantha, my office. Now." Derek Lawson, the manager, emerged, his cheap gray suit clinging uncomfortably to his bloated frame. His face was twisted with anger. Samantha swallowed hard, already knowing what was coming. The tiny office reeked of musty paper and stale coffee. Derek slammed the door shut behind them with a heavy thud and crossed his arms over his chest. "What the hell was that stunt you just pulled?" he barked. Samantha kept her composure. "I defended an elderly customer from harassment," she said. Derek scoffed. "A customer? Those kids come here every week and order half the damn menu. That old man, he buys a $2 sandwich and sits there nursing a lemonade. You just chased away paying customers and cost us revenue." Samantha stood stunned. "You're saying," she began slowly, "that I should have just stood by and watched someone get bullied?" "I'm saying," Derek cut in, his voice dropping lower, "you threatened customers and disrupted business. And for that, Samantha, you're fired. Effective immediately." Samantha felt like someone had punched her square in the chest. She opened her mouth to argue, but met Derek's cold, steel-gray gaze. She understood. There was no winning this fight. With trembling hands, Samantha unfastened her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the desk. No begging, no tears. She simply stood tall, lifted her chin high. "You just fired someone for standing up for what's right," Samantha said, her voice steady now. "Good luck living with that kind of morality." She turned on her heel, leaving Derek Lawson standing alone in the stale, freezing air of his tiny office. Outside, Zeke was still sitting at his table, the dried lemonade stains clinging to his worn jacket, his thin hands resting motionless on the tabletop. When he saw Samantha, he lifted his gaze, his eyes deep and heavy with something unspoken. "You all right, little lady?" he asked softly. Samantha swallowed hard, forcing a smile that even she knew was crooked. "I'm fine. I'll be fine." But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be that easy this time. Samantha strode out of Maple Grove Diner, every step feeling like she was carrying stones in her shoes. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew that inside, everything she had believed in, the decency she had fought for, had been discarded as carelessly as the apron she had left on Derek's desk. The afternoon breeze kissed her face, carrying a faint chill. Samantha climbed into her car, her hands still shaking. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel, exhaling a long, trembling breath, trying to smother the anger burning in her chest. Her phone buzzed in her jacket pocket. Too tired to care, she pulled it out. A message from her best friend, Chloe. "Have you checked online yet?" Samantha frowned, confused, when a second message arrived. TikTok, Facebook, everywhere. "Your video." Her heart lurched. She clicked the link Chloe had sent. A video less than 2 minutes long, but it only took one heartbeat for Samantha to realize what she was watching. The exact scene from earlier. Those 3 teens harassing Zeke, her stepping in, firmly ordering them to leave, and finally, Derek Lawson firing her right there in front of the customers. The video's title flashed on the screen. "Waitress fired for standing up for elderly man at Maple Grove Diner. Hashtag justice for Zeke. Hashtag respect elders." Samantha sat frozen as the view count skyrocketed by the second. 5.2K, 10K, 22K, and within just 10 minutes, the video had surpassed 100,000 views. She scrolled down to the comment section. Unbelievable. Firing the only person with a conscience in that whole place. This girl deserves a medal, not a pink slip. We need to do something for her and that elderly man. The hashtags hashtag stand with Samantha and hashtag justice for Zeke began spreading like wildfire. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages poured in from strangers, old friends, even people she had never met. "You're amazing. We support you. Do you need help? We have a spot open at our restaurant." Samantha was overwhelmed. Just an hour ago, she had been a nobody waitress, fired for not keeping her mouth shut. Now, she was becoming a voice for what was right, something everyone cherished deep down, but few dared to defend openly. One final message made her stop in her tracks, her heart pounding. The biker community is organizing a rally tonight in front of Maple Grove Diner. They're asking for you to be there. Samantha read the message again, just to be sure she wasn't hallucinating. Slowly, she lifted her head and looked up at the evening sky. The breeze ruffled the strands of hair across her forehead. Inside her chest, a strange new feeling was growing. Not just anger, not just hurt. Hope. And this time, she knew she wouldn't be standing alone. Just a few hours after the video went viral, the once quiet town of Maple Grove was buzzing like a storm brewing over the horizon. Standing across the street, Samantha clutched her phone tightly as the deep rumble of hundreds of motorcycle engines echoed down the narrow streets. She could hardly believe her eyes. The line of motorcycles stretched the entire block in front of the diner. Old and new Harleys, Indians, Triumphs, gleaming under the streetlights. Groups of bikers dismounted, leather jackets creaking, patches stitched proudly on their backs. Lions, eagles, and faded American flags. They didn't shout. They didn't chant. They just stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, forming an unbreakable wall across from Maple Grove Diner. Silent, steady, immovable. At the center of it all, Zeke, the old man in his worn leather jacket, stepped out from the crowd, leaning slightly on his cane, but standing tall. Beside him was a hulking man with a silver beard, wearing a leather vest emblazoned with Steel Brotherhood MC across the back. From a distance, Samantha saw Zeke give her a small nod, his eyes glinting beneath the brim of his worn knit cap. A warm rush of emotion rose in her chest. The diner's front door swung open. Derek Lawson, his face pale, tie askew, stuck his head out, frozen at the sight before him. The remaining staff hovered behind him, peeking nervously from behind the curtains. Samantha heard someone roar from within the crowd. "We're here for Zeke." And for Samantha. One voice became a chorus, then a thunderous roar that shook the very air. And just then, something unexpected happened. From down the street, an old Ford F-150 pickup, plastered with veteran decals, screeched to a halt right in front of the diner. An elderly man with silver hair, wearing a faded but unmistakable Marine Corps dress uniform, stepped out. Every head turned toward him. The man marched directly up to Derek without a word. He pulled a document from his jacket pocket and held it high for all to see. One of the bikers near the front read it aloud. Department of Defense Commendation of Honor awarded to Zeke Monroe for acts of valor in saving 14 comrades during the 1971 operation. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers. A group of bikers immediately began hoisting a massive banner across the street. The bold letters unmistakable. "We honor Zeke. We boycott disrespect." Samantha stood frozen, heart pounding. She realized then, this was no longer just about personal support. This was a declaration for respect, for dignity, for the courage to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, walking slowly toward the cheering crowd. And this time, all of Silverwood knew. Samantha Cole was no longer just another anonymous waitress. The cheers gradually died down, giving way to a solemn hush as the man in the Marine Corps uniform ascended the diner's front steps, the streetlights glinting off the silver insignia on his chest. He removed his cover, his voice deep and steady as it carried across the waiting silence. "My name is Richard Grayson. I fought alongside Zeke Monroe." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. Grayson turned to look at Zeke, the small, silver-bearded man whose stooped frame somehow seemed to stand tall once again. Zeke never bragged. Grayson continued, his voice unwavering. "He's the man who quietly saved my life and the lives of 13 other brothers during a monsoon flood in the jungle in 1971. When every escape route was cut off, it was Zeke who went back, alone, and carried each one of us out of the blood-soaked battlefield." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Grayson swept his gaze across the silent faces before him. And after he left the service, he continued slowly. Zeke didn't choose a life of comfort. He quietly repaired homes for the elderly, built ramps for the disabled, delivered food to struggling families, never asking for recognition, never waiting for thanks. Suddenly, a woman from the back of the crowd broke down in tears. She pushed her way forward, her voice trembling. "Mr. Zeke rebuilt my roof after Hurricane Katrina. I never even knew he was a soldier." A young man, maybe in his early 20s, raised his hand. "He fixed my truck when I needed to get to a job interview, and he didn't charge me a dime. Voices rose from all directions, each one sharing a small story, weaving together a portrait so raw it was almost painful. Zeke Monroe, the silent hero living among them all along. Derek Lawson stood frozen at the restaurant's doorstep. He had made a mistake that could not be undone. He hadn't just insulted a customer. He had trampled on the honor of a living symbol of the entire community. Samantha stood still, overwhelmed. She turned to look at Zeke. His eyes remained calm, as if all the praise swirling around him was nothing but a passing breeze. For Zeke, none of it had ever been about glory. It was simply about doing what was right. A gentle night breeze whispered through the parking lot filled with silent Harleys, standing watch like aging warriors. Samantha felt a chill run down her spine, not from fear, but from witnessing for the first time in her life just how powerful true compassion could be. No weapons, no flowery speeches, just action. And Zeke Monroe, the aging man in his battered leather jacket, was the embodiment of that truth. Derek Lawson remained on the diner steps, gripping a sweat-soaked rag tightly. His face had gone pale, beads of sweat pouring down despite the cool evening air. Around him, the sea of bikers, men and women with cold, unwavering stares, stood silent, patient. The weight of it all pressed down on Derek like a crushing stone. He swallowed hard, then stumbled down one step, raising his hands in a gesture that was half surrender, half desperate plea. "Everyone, I'm sorry," Derek stammered, his voice lacking conviction. I misunderstood the situation. I didn't know who Mr. Monroe was." A sharp, scornful whistle pierced the air from the crowd. It came from Griffin Hayes, the president of the Steel Brotherhood MC, a towering biker with tattoos covering both arms. He stepped forward and barked out, "You're not apologizing for yourself, boss man." Derek fumbled, glancing nervously at Samantha, standing between Zeke and Griffin, then hastily blurted out, If Miss Cole wants, she can have her job back. I can make arrangements. We could just move past this, right?" Samantha took a deep breath. She stepped forward under the dim yellow lights, looking stronger than ever. Her eyes gleamed with determination. Her voice rang out, clear, firm, and unshakable. "Mr. Lawson," Samantha said, "I don't need a job at this diner anymore." She paused, letting the soft murmuring from the crowd settle into silence. "What I want," she continued, her voice steady as steel, "is a public apology. Not for me. For Mr. Zeke Monroe, the man you allowed to be insulted and humiliated right here in your restaurant." Derek opened his mouth to argue, but as he looked around and saw hundreds of cold, steely gazes bearing down on him, he swallowed hard, crushed his pride, and turned toward Zeke. Zeke still stood there, hands tucked into the pockets of his weathered leather jacket, face unreadable. Derek bowed his head low, so low it was nearly a whisper. "Mr. Monroe, I'm sorry. I was wrong not to protect you, and for handling everything so terribly." No one clapped. No one cheered. The silence was heavier than any accusation. Zeke gave a slow nod, not out of anger, and not as easy forgiveness. Just the quiet acknowledgement of a man who had seen the worst the world had to offer and survived it. Samantha turned back to face the crowd of bikers. She raised her arm high, signaling. The crowd understood immediately. A ripple of nods, hands clapping each other on the back, a silent wave of solidarity. Griffin Hayes, the burly man with a leather vest stitched full of badges, stepped forward and clapped Derek so hard on the shoulder it nearly knocked him off balance. "Hope you remember this lesson," Griffin said in a low, gravelly voice. "Respect ain't something you buy with money, and you almost lost everything because you forgot that." Derek said nothing. He simply slinked back inside the diner, his face ashen and hollow. Samantha turned to Zeke and gave him a soft smile. "Come on, old man. The real party's not inside that rundown joint." Zeke chuckled quietly, the first genuine smile he had shown all day, and together with Samantha, Griffin, and hundreds of bikers at their backs, they walked away from that place. And on the small streets of Silverwood that night, a lesson had been etched, not into just one man's heart, but into the soul of an entire town. As Samantha walked out of the diner with Zeke Monroe and the group of bikers, the atmosphere outside erupted. Cheers roared from the hundreds gathered, and the rumble of motorcycle engines echoed down the small streets of Silverwood. Griffin, the leader of the Steel Brotherhood MC, handed Samantha a brand new leather jacket, embroidered with the club's emblem, a hand cradling a burning flame. He smiled proudly. "We don't just hand these out to anyone, kid. But today, you earned it." Samantha stared in disbelief. She accepted the jacket, her hands trembling slightly from emotion. She had never imagined that doing the right thing could earn her recognition from a community this strong. In the distance, a young man, one of the former trio who had harassed Zeke, stood silently, watching. His face showed clear remorse. No one needed to say anything. He understood. Respect isn't something you wait to learn until after you've already lost it. That night, Silverwood didn't just witness an upset. It etched a lesson deep into its very foundation. Courage doesn't just change one life. It can transform an entire community. News of Samantha Cole spread across Silverwood faster than the first breeze of summer, but it didn't stop there. Within just 24 hours, her story, from standing up for Zeke Monroe to bravely refusing to return under pressure, had become a nationwide sensation. Morning news shows, from local stations to major networks like NBC and CNN, ran bold headlines. A tiny waitress changes a town's view on courage. Social media exploded. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Everywhere, people shared images of Samantha in her biker jacket, hand in hand with Zeke, grinning brightly beneath a sky full of applause. The hashtag Stand With Samantha rocketed to the top of Twitter's trending topics. Comments flooded in with admiration. The world needs more Samanthas. If you don't know who you're sitting next to, treat them like you're sitting next to a hero. Don't judge someone by the shoes they wear. Look at the actions they take. It didn't stop there. Samantha's email inbox lit up, overwhelmed with job offers from all across the country. Restaurant management roles, community coordinator positions, even ambassador invitations from nonprofits. One prominent cafe chain in Seattle wrote bluntly in their email, "We're willing to cover your relocation, housing, and offer a starting salary of $75,000 per year. All we ask is that you bring that brave heart of yours with you." Samantha laughed in disbelief as she read message after message. She couldn't believe that by simply following her conscience, by doing what felt right, she had set off a wave this enormous. When Zeke Monroe heard the news, he simply chuckled softly and patted her on the shoulder. Sometimes, all you need to do is give the door a little push. The wind will take care of the rest. Amid the offers, the admiration, and all the wide-open opportunities, Samantha realized something. She no longer had to stay small in this world. She had found her voice, and this time, she would never let it be silenced again. One bright afternoon, as Samantha sat by the window of her small apartment, watching the flood of news about her story spread across social media, her phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen. She hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. "Hello, this is Samantha," she said. On the other end, a deep, warm male voice replied, polished yet commanding. "Good afternoon, Ms. Cole. My name is Marcus DeWitt, CEO of DeWitt Security Solutions." Samantha frowned slightly, not recognizing the name. Marcus continued, "I've been following your story closely. Your courage, your ability to handle a tense situation, and your unwavering integrity left a strong impression on us." She stayed silent, letting his words flow into her ears without reacting yet. "We specialize in protecting high-profile individuals, leaders, artists, but more importantly, we seek people with strong hearts who stand up when it matters, like you did," Marcus emphasized. A brief pause. "I'd like to invite you to our headquarters in Nashville to discuss a position, not just a job, but a career. We'll cover all travel and accommodation expenses. If you agree, a company SUV will pick you up tomorrow." Samantha blinked, stunned. She had dreamed of bigger opportunities, but never imagined an offer from a prestigious security company would come simply because she had chosen to stand up for justice. She tightened her grip on the phone, her heart swelling. "Mr. DeWitt, I "I'm honored," Samantha replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll give your offer serious thought." "Good." Marcus smiled from the other end. "But I think you already know your answer deep down." When the call ended, Samantha leaned back in her chair, her heart pounding wildly. The sky outside seemed even brighter. She understood. This wasn't just a job offer. It was confirmation. That courage matters, and those who dare to act for what's right will always find the right doors swinging open before them. The next morning, Samantha Cole stood in front of the mirror, brushing her simple hair. Sunlight from Silverwood flooded her small rented room, casting a golden glow over the swirling thoughts still tangled in her mind. The black SUV was already waiting outside in the driveway. She knew that once she stepped through that door, her life would turn onto a path entirely different, one she had never even dared to dream of. But Samantha was no longer the timid waitress of yesterday, no longer the girl who tried to avoid trouble, choosing silence just to survive. Now, she understood. Sometimes, one small action at the right moment is enough to ignite a whole movement. And sometimes, one person daring to stand up can change everything, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. As she stepped outside, the usual buzz of the town seemed to hush for a moment. Samantha lifted her gaze to the deep blue sky. She felt a quiet strength flowing through her veins, not because of fame, not because of social media praise, but because she knew she had done the right thing. Marcus DeWitt stood beside the vehicle, flashing a pleased smile as he watched her approach. "Ready for the next chapter of your life?" he asked, his voice warm and steady. Samantha smiled, a real smile, without fear, without hesitation. "I was born to do this," she answered firmly. The car door closed softly behind her, carrying her away from a worn-out past toward a future where courage was no longer mistaken for recklessness, but recognized as a priceless gift. And as the SUV rolled down the quiet street, Samantha knew, whether in a sleepy town or on faraway highways, she would always remember. An ordinary person can create extraordinary change if they dare to believe in the power of doing what's right. Her journey was just beginning.